The Batman franchise is known for big, bombastic action sequences, but which movie has the best final battle? Today we're going to stop and rank all 14 Batman movie final battles from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of the Batman final battles. My list isn't the right list. It's just my list, and I would love to see yours. One more thing before we get started. There's a sale going on in my merch store right now, so you can get an I Talk Movies Too Much t-shirt for 40% off, or anything else in my merch store for 40% off. That means $13 t-shirts. We got hoodies, stickers, phone cases, masks, all that kind of fun stuff, a bunch of different designs. The link is down below in the description, and let's get started. Coming in last place is Batman 66. Now, inherent to this movie, it wasn't designed to give us a final battle that would score well on a ranking like this. To state the obvious, it's the oldest movie on this list, it had the smallest budget, it was written in 10 days, and it was a continuation of a campy, goofy TV show, in which case it's bigger than the TV show, but by comparison to everything else on this list, it feels very small scale. You have a boat driving in a circle, shooting animated little blasts in the water, and then you see a model of a submarine shaking like this, and then you have the classic Biff, pow, wow, final fight on the top of the submarine. But, you know, there's just nothing really here that's a big emotional payoff. It's just a big action sequence by comparison to the rest of the TV show. When compared to modern day blockbusters, the sophistication of stories these days, it certainly feels small scale, but inherent to the nature of this movie, it was just never gonna do well on a list like this. Number 13, Batman and Robin. Now, this movie is infamously one of the greatest blockbuster misfires of all time, and all of that plays into the final battle as well. You've got two main villains whose schemes aren't really compatible with one another, and you just have a style that is both excessively over the top, excessively spectacular, but also so goofy and so campy that it has aged horribly. So certain segments of it look like ice capades. Other parts have just everyone swinging on wires in goofy ways. There's some bad green screen. There's just a lot of stuff that doesn't work. It goes for spectacle. It is the opposite of Batman 66, but it doesn't work. And they bring in a villain like Bane, who's just so horribly misused in this film that he's just looks goofy. He looks cheesy. He's wasted. And so there's nothing particularly exciting. You don't care about the plot, and the only thing that kind of has a little bit of emotional weight to it is that Mr. Freeze ends up helping Batman with Alfred at the end, but that's not really even the final battle, that's the epilogue. Next up, Batman Forever. It's a really bad sign when the most memorable segment of your final battle is a pun.
Holy rusted metal, Batman!
Huh?
You're ground, it's all metal, it's full of holes, you know?
That's also intended as a reference to the TV show from 30 years earlier. Seems like the big problem with these Joel Schumacher final battles is that they're big, they're expensive, there's these massive sets, but in the script themselves, there's not an interesting, compelling threat that Batman, Robin need to overcome, in which case you just kind of have huge things happening that you don't care too much about. And so and then you have villains that aren't physical threats for our two crime fighters who are actually good fighters, in which case you have Robin getting defeated because he's gracious, and then you have Batman defeating Two-Face by flipping coins, and you defeat Riddler just by throwing a batarang into a piece of technology. It's just not big, interesting action, though it looks really expensive in another sense. Number 11, Josstice League. Now, this movie as a whole is an abomination. The set piece by itself, I guess it's fine. A lot of what happens in here is the footage that Zack Snyder shot, and so you get a bunch of these big, great Zack Snyder action visuals, but then you have this weird thing going on where, for For some reason, Joss Whedon or the studio decided that they wanted to color correct the entire thing and turn it red and crank the saturation up to 11. And so it just looks kind of ridiculous the entire time. It looks bizarre. It's kind of fun when Superman shows up and finally you get to see Henry Cavill behaving like a classic version of Superman, not kind of the brooding Zack Snyder version of him.
You're all too weak to see the truth.
Well, I believe in truth, but I'm also a big fan of justice.
So there's some nice moments in that, but also in general, it has all the same flaws as the rest of the film, where they took a big epic finale and then they had to squish it and remove all the nuance, all the interesting things, all the payoff. And since the rest of the movie didn't set up anything properly, you're just left with a hollow action sequence. And then it also, much like the rest of the movie, because Joss Whedon was told to just add stupid jokes into it, the way they do that is using the Flash as the butt end of jokes. So they give him nothing heroic to do in the finale. And the one time he does something to save some people, where he pushes a car, they then immediately use that as the punchline to a joke where Superman does something way more epic and saves more people. So the Flash is a joke rather than actually a hero, which just undermines your whole movie. That is just such a bad decision. So,
Well, I knew you didn't bring me back because you like me.
I don't. Not.
there's some good action here because Zack Snyder shot it, but once again, as with the whole of this movie, every change that Joss Whedon and the executives made this sequence worse. Bringing us into the top 10, the Lego Batman movie. Now, this is one that's a little bit interesting for me because I really like this movie for the way that it explores the Bruce Wayne character and his relationship to the Joker in a totally outside the box sort of way and brings in the whole toy chest because it is a Lego movie, and so I have Voldemort showing up and all these other characters, intertwining all of it together, doing its own version of a multiverse type film in a Batman movie. But also for that same reason, by the time I get to the third act of this film, I'm kind of exhausted because it's just so much, and as it goes along, it just gets more and more intense. There's a little bit of overload for me. So by the time you get to the end of it, it pays off a bunch of things nicely. It's cheesy. It's goofy in the way that it kind of pays off this whole Joker relationship with them building the bridge and holding hands and everything like that. But it fits the movie in another sense, and I kind of like it. But in another, it's a movie where the longer it goes on, because I'm getting exhausted, I think it's not as strong at the end as it is at the beginning. And so I can't put the final battle particularly high up on the list, though it pays things off pretty well. Number 9, Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Now, I do think that this is a great film that tells a great Bruce Wayne story and brings in an interesting new villain rather than just relying on the rogues gallery. And the final battle that we get in the film fits the story that they were telling, which isn't meant to be the biggest and most epic of Batman stories and biggest and most epic of finales. It's a more personal story because it ties to someone that Bruce Wayne, Batman, has a connection to and her own personal vendetta. And so the fact that it's lower on the list doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. It's just not inherently as exciting, as epic as some of the other ones, which were designed as these $200 million blockbusters that had to have big, gigantic, satisfying finales with a ton of spectacle. So it fits the movie that they were making, kind of takes like the choices that she makes, that she can't give up her vendetta and has to get her revenge, fits the movie properly, just not as spectacular as some of the others. Number 8, Batman Returns. Now this is an interesting one because I think it has elements that are really good, in particular, the way it closes out Catwoman's vendetta against Max Schreck, where she can't let it go while Bruce is kind of pleading with her to kind of stop her mission of revenge. But in the end, she uses all of her 9 lives to take him out.
How about a kiss, Santa Claus?
Or does she use all of her 9 lives? So she gets her revenge in this very memorable sort of way. And then in this truly Tim Burton finale for Penguin, after he dies, his penguins pick him up and slowly carry him back into the water. So there's these things about it that, with the music and everything, certainly swell the emotions. But the actual finale plot itself feels like perhaps Tim Burton's original plan was second guessed by the studio and he had to change it or not go as far as he wanted, because it sets up this horrifying plotline about Penguin killing all the firstborn sons by dropping them in toxic water. And as soon as it sets that up, with one scene without a real fight, it's undone, and then it sets up immediately this other plot line about penguins with rockets on their backs blowing up the city. Like, they just immediately changes directions, and so it doesn't, as a plot, have as payoff, has the action, anything that you kind of want from a big finale. And you got like penguins swinging an umbrella, but it's very lackluster when it comes to the actual action itself. Specific moments are big, but the people with character arcs with emotional payoff, it's not Batman. He's just kind of along for the ride as the villains' plans implode in on them. Next up, Batman Begins. This is another one where I'm conflicted because on the one hand, it has both citywide stakes as well as personal stakes. Ra's al Ghul's trying to enact his plan to cause the whole city to kind of tear itself apart, but at the same time, both Bruce Wayne and Ra's al Ghul feel a sense of betrayal towards one another, and so you have multiple levels to the conflict in what you're feeling in the final battle. It has big action, it has train spectacle, it has a one-on-one fight. You have little emotional character moments where Bruce reveals his true identity to Rachel, and a moment that I think pays off really nicely.
It's not who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me.
But the problem is, it's going for a big blockbuster spectacle finale, and I do not like the way that Christopher Nolan shot the action in this movie. For a movie that I love almost everything about it, it's an action movie with action shot in a way that I've just never liked, in which case he's battling all these ninjas and it's just chopping everything. You can't see what's happening. It's in close quarters, and so it's spectacle that's not spectacular to look at. And when you're talking about final battles, if the action itself is kind of lackluster, you can't have it as a top final battle. Number 6, The Batman. Now, when it comes to this movie, so much of it is about a Bruce Wayne that is just out for vengeance. And when you get to the final battle, he's out to finally be the hero. So when you get to that stadium sequence where the new mayor has just been shot, they look up, they realize the rafters are filled with people with guns, and then Batman, it crashes through the ceiling, the music kicks in, it is an awesome, awesome moment, and then he just starts tearing guys up in full-blown Batman mode. And that's why this is another one that's frustrating, because the great stuff is awesome, but it's also a finale that I can imagine a version that would have been even better. Just in general, with the way the movie's structured, by the time you get to this sequence, Falcone's already dead, Riddler's arrested, and so Batman is just fighting a bunch of literally faceless, unknown, generic, online lunatics that have bought into the Riddler scheme. So we don't care about any individual one of them being defeated. And that kind of cheapens some of the emotional payoff of it. Second one, the actual action of him fighting is awesome, but it is really quick. Like, he drops down and takes these guys out really quick. And then it's a lot of him like dangling and trying to catch his breath. And then for me, I wish it had, the way that it communicated, he's decided to be the hero, a symbol of hope to the victims. I just feel there was a version of it that would have worked much better for me. It's a movie that, like, it's so awesome in certain senses, then it's also like, but I can see that better version. And that's kind of what this whole movie was to me, of like, so much of it I absolutely loved. And I was like, we're so close to the best, but we're not there too. In 5th place, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. Now, this is one of these highly polarizing films, but I've always liked it. I've always appreciated the good aspects of the film while understanding it is a film with a lot of flaws. But when it comes to what Zack Snyder is good at, delivering cool looking action sequences, that is his thing. And with this movie, he got to create the first live action version of our trio of DC superheroes coming together to battle Doomsday. And so with that, you get a bunch of awesome shots, a bunch of heroic moments that feel very true to Superman, Wonder Woman, as well as Batman. You get some shots that feel like they're ripped straight out of the comic books. It's a long sequence, if anything, maybe a too long of a sequence. And of course, by the time you get to the end of it, it has actual stakes with Superman sacrificing himself for the purpose of defeating Doomsday. So I think there's a lot here to love. Part of the problem, though, when it comes to this one is that Doomsday in the movie is just introduced as a villain just to have a boss fight. And so it's an awesome boss fight sequence, but it feels like we're not tying in some other things that would be more satisfying. It's just a really cool Zack Snyder throwdown at the end of the movie. And also, as this is a Batman final battle ranking, Batman of our trio is obviously, and for obvious reasons, the least important of our heroes in a battle against Doomsday, because he's just a dude that can shoot some kryptonite gas grenades. And so not as important in a battle that I think is a very cool sequence. In fourth place, The Dark Knight Rises, Christopher Nolan's truly epic finale to his Dark Knight trilogy, where the scale of the battle is by far the largest of the action sequences in any of his movies, where he shot it on location with hundreds and hundreds of extras, and you feel the size and the importance of the battle. Likewise, you get a rematch with Bane in it, you get technology playing into it, you have a bomb that gives a ticking clock to everything taking place, and by the end, sacrifices have to be made. You have Bruce revealing himself to Gordon as to who he truly is in a moment that I think pays off really, really well.
Shouldn't the people know the hero who saved them?
A hero can be anyone, even a man doing something as simple and reassuring as putting a coat around a young boy's shoulders to let him know the world hadn't ended.
But it's brought down by just some odd choices with the Talia al Ghul reveal and then her eventual death, where instead of the reveal feeling like it fleshed out the story, it just felt like it cheapened Bane and replaced him with someone that you're not nearly as interested in or invested in. And then, of course, her death is infamously one of the worst deaths in a blockbuster, like a very odd moment of bad acting in a Christopher Nolan movie. So once again, so much awesome, so much great stuff that's so satisfying, so big, so epic, so Nolan. Just a couple mistakes in there that hold it back. Real quick before I give you my top 3, remember to join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of the Batman final battles. My list isn't the right list. It's just my list, and I would love to see yours. Also remember, got these t-shirts on sale for the next few days. The link is down below in the description if you're interested in an I Talk Movies Too Much shirt. And I've done a ton of these Batman rankings, the movies, the actors, the villains, all of that fun stuff. You can check it out right up here in this playlist. In third place, Batman 1989. Now, if you've been following along with my Batman review series, as well as my previous Batman rankings, you know that this is a movie that's extraordinarily important to me, my love of movies, my love of comic book movies, but it's also a movie that I don't think has aged all that well, in large part because of the storytelling. But when I think about the final battle, I think that's one of the standout sequences of the movie, where it's big, it's operatic, it's very Tim Burton, it's weird, it has all sorts of interesting sets where you have this parade, you have the Batwing, and then they go up this cathedral, and so the imagery's interesting, the music fills everything out, and just Danny Elfman knocked it out of the park with his score for this film that just kind of elevates everything. You get Batman in a bunch of fights where, for the most part, he can take a bunch of them out pretty easy, but one of them kind of is able to get in some good hits on him. You have the Joker being truly crazy, zany in his attempts to woo Vicky Vale, and so all of it stands out. There's iconic shots, even weird ones that are super comic booky, with Batman in the middle of a battle deciding to fly up in front of the moon for the camera. Just stuff like that doesn't make a lot of sense. You wouldn't put it in a movie now, but in the context of this Burtonized world, it just fleshed everything out nicely. So I think this is one that actually is a standout sequence in a movie that had some storytelling problems. Our runner-up, The Dark Knight. Now, this is an interesting one because it's a comic book movie final battle that's thrilling. It's edge of your seat, but it's structured radically different from any other comic book big finale that I can think of. Because on the one hand, you do have the action side with Batman, and then on the other side, you have these two ships with prisoners and civilians trying to decide who's going to blow the other person up. That all ties into the actual more interesting battle between Batman and the Joker. They're competing worldviews and perspectives on the city of Gotham of, is it worth saving? Will they save themselves? Is Batman wasting his time with people that have gone too far and are too cynical and too evil? And it just makes for this layered conclusion. You do have Batman having to battle both police as well as Joker's goons while trying to keep the police alive because of the way the sequence entirely plays out. You have the action, the spectacle, and Batman having to use his smarts to make everything happen. But so much of the tension comes from the actual more intellectual, more cerebral side of the finale involving that prisoner's dilemma. And it's just such an interesting, memorable, tense sequence that pays off in a way that you're not expecting, because it's literally like this big gigantic hulking prisoner takes a remote from the prison guard, throws it out the window, and that's the moment of satisfaction where even like this like hardened looking criminal knows the right thing to do and isn't giving in to the Joker's madness. And in light of the movie and the messaging and what's being explored of these competing worldviews, it's so satisfying while having the action. And then it's followed up with the Two-Face epilogue where the Joker wins that battle, though. And so they kind of counterbalance in it of like, while the city itself showed there's still hope, Joker still won in the sense that you can even corrupt the best of them all. And so it's layered, it's complex, it's not simple, it's got a bunch in there. Great finale. But coming in first place, I gotta go with Zack Snyder's Justice League, a truly, truly epic conclusion to a movie with an epic 4-hour runtime. And one of the things that can happen when you have a tremendously long runtime is you can just set up so many character arcs, so many plot points, so many little bits. So when you get to the finale of this movie, all of our Justice League members get a moment to do something awesome that ties back to something earlier in the film. Some of them are more profound and iconic, where you literally have the Flash turning back time, running into an explosion, rebuilding the universe through time travel, where you have Cyborg having this emotional moment where his whole journey has been about trying to accept himself, finding his place in this world, and he's tempted by the mother box and he makes the right choice. When you have Superman finally show up, and he is kind of it's not the Josstice League happy version of Superman, but it's not as brooding as the one that we've had before, and he just destroys Steppenwolf, and it's so satisfying when it happens. But Aquaman, Batman, all of them get a moment to do awesome things, to be the Justice League in this huge, massive finale that on so many different levels is satisfying, it's emotional, it's memorable, in which case it's everything that I want from a comic book movie final battle at the end of an epic comic book movie that's everything I want from a comic book movie. So it comes in at number 1. Remember, you can get these I Talk Movies Too Much shirts on sale for the next few days at 40% off. The link is down below in the description. Also, remember, I've done a ton of these Batman rankings. You can check those out right over there. And I've been working on this project about unmade, canceled Batman movies. It's one of my favorite projects I've ever worked on. You can check out parts 1 and 2 right down there. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.